It is time for another edition of Doctor and the Dude. I am Dr. Jim Siebert, and joining me is the dude, Josh Morgerman. Josh, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, Dr. Jim. I'm just kind of getting ready now. We're getting very close to the real hurricane season, as I call it, and I'm just, just charging those batteries and ready to go.
You put that in a very good way. You're right. As we get into, this time of year, we're all looking and waiting for things to start to develop. In fact, now you are fully ready, aren't you? Because now you're actually on the Gulf Coast.
Exactly. I am here. I am actually in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, which is, this has been ground zero for some of the greatest American hurricane events. Category 5 Hurricane Camille. The eye passed right over downtown Bay St. Louis, where I'm standing now. And also, this was ground zero for Hurricane Katrina. Highest storm surge in the history, or on record in the Western Hemisphere, happened right around here in this bay. So this is a significant place in terms of hurricanes, and it is my headquarters. This is where I live during hurricane season, and folks here are very attuned to anything that might be happening in the Gulf.
So why is it that you actually go and live there on the coast? I'm a forecaster. I've been forecasting for 30 years now, and I have never tried to put myself as close to the action as what you do. So why do you do that?
Well, Dr. Jim, I live and breathe hurricanes, and as someone who hunts them, I like to just be kind of close to the action and where they're developing. And I'll tell you, there's something really different between, just kind of like sort of flying into various locations to intercept hurricanes versus just living right on the Gulf Coast, right on, like you're sort of like the front row seat to what's happening, and as with this disturbance this week that I know we're going to talk about, it's not just looking at it on computer models, but also feeling and experiencing it like I did this week, for example. We had a lot of weather from that thing, which never developed. And it was quite interesting to watch it unfold, even if it didn't become anything.
Well, and it's a good point, because from a forecasting standpoint, this was a difficult one because we had, at the end of a front, and the kind of the low was sort of sitting there. Was it going to organize or not? And in this case, it didn't. But like you said, though, even though it didn't become tropically organized, you still got weather out of it.
Yeah, we totally did. We had like a lot of big thunderstorms and electrical storms here on the Mississippi coast, like big lightning strikes, knocking out power at the casinos in Biloxi and causing quite a show here in Bay St. Louis. Now, Dr. Jim, I want to ask you, tell me the truth. The models were all over the place with that disturbance. What was I know it's easy to kind of Monday morning quarterback this thing, but what were you expecting from it, or were you expecting anything from it?
Well, honestly, in fact, you and I talked about this a little bit as well, but, we sent one of our correspondents to New Orleans, and, in case, but because we knew that there would be some type of weather for it, like what you were just talking about, the heavy rainfall. When the modeling is so disjuncted, maybe that's not really a word or not, but when it's all over the place, I tend to look at that and say, you know what? It's probably not going to develop, because at some point, typically as you get closer to when it should develop and it's still all over the place, it means the model, it's just not probably going to happen, because typically then you'll start to see that organization and the modeling comes together, right? And then you're like, okay, everyone's coming in alignment. But when it doesn't, then I'm like, yeah, this one has a lot of question marks all over it.
Yeah, it's a good point, Dr. Jim. I noticed that the models were not converging on this thing. They were just like, when they were showing different solutions, one had it going into Texas as a hurricane, another had it going into the Florida Panhandle as a tropical storm. It kind of, the tracks in the Euro ensembles look like, we call it the squash spider, when the sort of, the tracks were just all over the place. And like you said, when you don't have any kind of convergence, it's a sign that maybe this thing it's just model static. It's not real. And I guess that's what happened. But of course, to me, I'm always going to look at the most exciting computer models and assume that those are the truth.
Well, it's difficult for models to handle something that's stationary. Modeling does much better when something is moving, because it's just that they're designed that way. And so when it's just sitting there, they're not really sure how to handle that. And so that's another reason why. And for our viewers, keep this in mind as we look in the future, and we'll watch these long-range models. It's not when we're looking at the long-range models that we're saying this is exactly what's going to happen, but it shows us the pattern. and that gives us that kind of a heads up. And as it gets closer to making landfall or whatever happens, and everything's coming into alignment, when we have those spaghetti plots being very small, then our confidence is very high. And in this case, our confidence was never high.
So tell me, Dr. Jim, now that we're really getting close to August and when things are really going to get going, how are things changing there in the studio? Are you guys going out to some different level of readiness now or preparedness?
You know, we take it steps by steps by getting more, I guess, prepared. You know, we have our people in place. You know, for example, you're exactly where you need to be, and we're trying to get our people exactly where they need to be. Now, a lot of that is here in the studio, of course. When we start covering hurricanes, then we are going to be on the air a lot more and with a lot more intensity. So a lot of our preparation is just making sure that everything's in place. Plus, we also have food and snacks and things here because we're going, when we do get into that hurricane mode, that we'll be prepared for that. So yes, we are also in the same mode as trying to get prepared.
Wow, food and snacks. Okay, now you made me jealous. I have to up my game at my hurricane house in my hunting pad here.
Well, seriously, now's the time, my friends, not just Josh, but everybody. This is the best time to get ready for those types of things, because once the storms start coming, things get a little bit more intense. Well, we're now out of time for this edition, but Josh, I hope you're ready. I know we're ready, and I hope everybody's ready for the rest of hurricane season. We'll see you next time.